Welcome to Executive Exchange Radio with moderator Joe Cristiano, America's corporate exorcist. Hosted by Dr. Jennifer Beeman and George Gutierrez, trusted advisors to chief executives and business leaders across the nation. If you would like to add to the conversation, call 646-652-4620.
Let me postulate something. It seems that from what you say, a paycheck then is finite. They get their pay, all right, and then the next day you start all over again. You have a clean sheet. But once you treat someone with reciprocity, that means making them feel they're worthwhile. What they have done is valuable, and it elevates their own self-esteem. That's not finite. That's infinite. So that stays forever. It can be 5 years from now. You can say, working with George is the greatest job I ever had. I would do anything for the guy, etc. Where with a paycheck, it's finite. I got paid last week. It's Monday morning. We start at ground zero again. With the right method of reciprocity, you don't start from ground zero. You start from an elevated situation, all right? And conversely, if you don't include that in your dialogue with your employees, you start from a lower end,
right?
Than your paycheck. You have to rebuild it to bring it back to ground zero again, and that's got to be 10 times harder. So this is an interesting conversation. I quite frankly never thought of this, and just from hearing you and watching the video that you sent me, I started thinking about this, and I had no idea where we're going with this. But the more I think about it, the more important it is. In fact, it may be one of the most important things a manager can do, because the employees can solve the problem for you before they even occur.
Yes, and they will when they know how much that we value them. For instance, George's employees would probably step out and do it to make him proud, because you know what, he gives them kudos, and as human beings we like them. So we're going to tend to repeat whatever it took that got us those kudos. So chances are his employees are going to go and find an answer before George even realizes there's an issue, so they can get another pat on the back, so to speak. And loyalty ensues, and guess what? Our customers feel it. They sense it, and it's obvious. Yeah. And it just all kind of rolls downhill.
Isn't there always the risk of giving kudos, but it coming across insincere, whether you meant it sincerely or not? Because I've worked for guys who very rarely said anything, went out of their way to express their appreciation, but I knew they appreciated it, and I worked my bones off for them, And yet there were others that I've worked for that were always thanking me and this and that, and it was so disingenuous. I hated when they complimented me. I mean, the exact opposite. It's a real strange, sometimes the business environment is so strange that employees look at it from a different point of view than sometimes the manager. And I guess, I don't know where you draw that line, but some people are just naturally that way, and some people are just naturally the other way, and they probably shouldn't be managers in the first place. They should be technicians somewhere in a lab by themselves, Yes.
It's definitely got to be genuine, or it's going to have an opposite effect. Nobody, just like you said, nobody wants to hear an insincere, verbal pat on the back, because it means nothing, and in anything it could almost cause a retaliation. It's irritating to hear somebody be disingenuine. So it's got to be genuine, and that requires it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. It requires that we have a relationship with them as individuals, and we know them as human, and it does require that our managers and our leaders are that type of people. If they're not like you said, they might not be management material. They might have been promoted and really be in a better off in a position other than where they just happen to land.
Is there a way to determine whether or not a person is management material relative to what we are talking about? Because I've worked for people who were bright, hardworking, horrible managers. And they were good people, but horrible managers. And if you explained this to them, they could never do it in a million years. They couldn't. They'd have to go through some shock treatment, electronic shock treatment, to change their behavior.
Yes.
George, would you want to tackle that?
Some people don't want to be in management position, and they prefer not to be in management position because they're not necessarily, drawn to being able to working with others. They prefer to work alone. They're very process driven. So I'll give you an example from a world that I know very well. Physicists and engineers, for example. Very few engineers or scientists ever wanted to become some kind of leader or manager. They just refused to do it.
Right.
They were really immersed in the work that they did, and they loved, whether you're a mechanical engineer or you're a civil engineer, they loved building their little trinkets or designing the things, or going through the scientific process of trying to understand how things, worked. But many times we would place those people in positions of responsibility because we thought they were the smartest people in the room.
Right.
So they were forced to be put into those positions. So first of all, they didn't want to be there. And second of all, they had a lot of skills and they had a lot of knowledge. They had a lot of skills about being either an engineer or some other type of technical thing. But they had no skills or knowledge about people or how to interact with people or how to lead people or how to treat people or how to persuade people, which is what we're talking about today. But you both both of you, Dr. Beeman, as always, she's able to bring it back to the basics, and I love that. And so are you, Joe. We're looking at 6 shortcuts of how to persuade people, or how people get persuaded. Well, leadership is about influencing others to do things, to make them do things that they would otherwise think they couldn't do. People, earlier you said it, people come to work, they get a paycheck, just by going there for the 9 to 5, I do my job, you give me my money. That there's been the reciprocity already there.
Right.
That doesn't make me happy, it doesn't make me unhappy. But it is a human need that is being fulfilled. They gotta have the money to take care of the rest of the family.
Right.
The way Dr. Beeman really brought it back, I think, to a real conversation is about relationship, and you have to know your people, in order to be able to influence your people. And you can use any of these shortcuts, to get them to do something. But if they see it as a shortcut, then they know you're not being genuine. You don't really care. You're just trying to get through that day, and you want to get your way done, and that's it. There's no relationship. The only transactional relationship that is there is really based through authority. You're going to do what you're going to do because I'm telling you to do it. Therefore, if you don't do it, the only reciprocity you're going to get is a kick in the behind, and you're going to lose your job. So I think Dr. Beeman really had it right from the very beginning when she brought the human factor into this. And I say this all the time, and I don't know what kind of responses I get from people that are listening or not, but I want folks to know that leadership is personal. It's not a job. It's personal. If you're the leader, you should be working the hardest.
Right.
To understand how all those that you're leading, react to the things that you're asking them to do. So these are shortcuts, and they work for the most part. And I think Dr. Cialdini did a great job. I watched that video of his about 2 or 3 times, and it's back. The amount of statistic that backs up his research is incredible.
Yeah.
The one that really blows my mind is the one of scarcity, and I think about the work that Dr. Beeman and I do. and I don't know how often she uses it, but I use that scarcity principle a lot of times, and a lot of times more than not, when I use it, I get more clients than I can handle. To be honest with you, it's pretty interesting.
How do you apply that? I'm sure people who are listening are saying scarcity. What does scarcity have to do with management or attracting customers? Or how does that work?
Well, so so that's the second universal principle of persuasion, and the way that Dr. Robert Cialdini looked at it, he made an example, or through his research, a British Airways airline back in 2003 basically decided they could no longer operate twice. Taking flights between London and New York because they said that they thought they were losing money, or they said they were losing money. So when they said they were going to shut down those flights and just not make it available anymore, all of a sudden every flight was booked. People thought that was gonna go away. You were taking something away from their access. As long as they had access to it, they never used it to its full.
Right.
But once it became scarce, they wanted it the most. I mean, if you really want to see that principle work, I mean, just look at Black Friday and what happens on this when they open these stores. Mobs run through the doors, they step all over each other so they can buy some kind of toy. They know there's only so many in stock, so they need to be the first one in there, and if they're not, they're going to roll over you. So there's a way of getting people, again, of influencing people, to persuade people, to get what it is that you have or that you offer. Now, part of this is whatever you're offering has to be worth something. So some things I wish became scarce because they would be great. I'd never see them again. Don't want them. But when you have a good product out there and all of a sudden it becomes scarce, people want it even more. So how does that apply to leadership? If you have a leader that is always spending 80% of his or her time just with an open door policy, never getting anything done, maybe that leader should make himself or herself a little bit more scarce and start concentrating on doing some of the other things that need to get done to be productive, and then become more available to their teams on a routine basis as opposed to on a regular basis. Sometimes if you make yourself scarce, you become more valuable to the people that you have.
Yeah. And maybe that
in turn it also increases your strategic presence, so to speak, almost by force, because it's forcing you into transforming your processes and your practices by becoming more scarce, as using George's example in support of that. So it's really a win-win.
Yeah, and by doing that, don't you increase the independence of the person working, so they don't feel like they're being no one's riding roughshod on them, and that they have the freedom to exercise their own talents and then prove to whomever they're reporting to that they can do the job even above and beyond of what is expected. Is that part of it?
That's absolutely right. You become more self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Now the trick here is to make sure that honest mistakes can be underwritten. So in other words, I know of executives that have allowed big dollars mistake to be made by some of their people, and they looked at it as an investment in that individual.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And so they exude a level of loyalty that is rarely seen in business. Now, obviously, you have to have the pockets for it, but the return, the level of reciprocity that you will get when you underwrite, an honest, huge mistake, irrespective of how costly it is, sometimes grows leaders of the future that will return that loss to you 10 times over.
Yeah. Well, we actually went over our 30 minutes already that we allotted for this program. We're almost 35 minutes, and it went so quickly. I can't believe I'm looking at the clock, and it's already past our bedtime, so to speak. But it's interesting. And, if you employ just the first two, and how about in 2 weeks when we have our next program, we hit on the next 4 items on the list? Would that be acceptable to you? I think with some continuity. And I just want to make one comment, but if they employ just those first 2 principles of the principles of persuasion, when the boss comes into the floor or to the workplace, people welcome the boss in. I want him to see what I'm doing. I'm glad to see him. I want him to notice how well I'm doing, rather than, oh boy, here comes the boss, put your head down and don't say anything. And really, you change the attitude of the entire workforce from one of a negative disposition to one of a very positive disposition. And it's fascinating that it seems that so many industries have it inside out and upside down, but I'm glad we squared away the world today. Now we have the next 4. We'll be talking about authority, consistency, liking, and consensus on our next program. Maybe we'll get through all 4, maybe just get through 2, but we look forward to it. You have any closing comments to make?
No, I'm not going to talk.
Dr. Beeman does.
Go ahead.
Dr. Beeman, you have any closing comments?
No, I'll zip my lips because I'll keep on talking. I enjoy this topic, so I'll stop.
Okay, great. George, your closing comments, please.
Now, like always, I appreciate the listening audience. I appreciate the comments and the opportunity to give something of value and just share time with you every 2 weeks. I sincerely appreciate it. We do this because we love what we do. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, guys. Okay, well, I'll see you in 2 weeks, folks. This is Joe Cristiano, your moderator for the Executive Exchange Radio. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Until then, stay well and stay tuned.